All right, 7:44 p.m. All right. Good evening, fellow commissioners and the general public. My name is Michael Champanis, and I'm the chair of the Transportation Advisory Commission. Before we begin, please note that this meeting is being recorded and will be uploaded to the county website and on YouTube. To conduct this meeting wholly electronically and to effectuate both the emergency procedures authorized by new state legislation and FOIA, the Transportation Advisory Commission needs to make certain findings and determinations for the record. It's a bit cumbersome, so I ask you in advance for your patience. First, because each member of this commission is participating in this meeting from a separate location, we must verify that a quorum of members is participating and that each member's voice is clear, audible, and at an appropriate volume for all the other members. I ask that each of you pay close attention to ensure that you can hear each of your colleagues. I'm asking each commissioner participating in this meeting to state your name and the location from which you're participating when I mention your name. At large, Linda Sperling.
Hi, I am participating from my home in Clifton, Virginia.
Fantastic, thank you. Braddock District, Kevin Morse.
Kevin Morse, Burke, Virginia.
Thank you, Kevin. Hunter Mill District is vacant. Mason District, Roger Hoskin.
Roger Hoskin, participating from Falls Church, the near Seven Corners.
We gotcha. Mount Vernon District, Pete Sitnick. Pete Sitnick. Can you hear us, Pete? I saw a picture there, but I didn't hear anything.
Come back to him.
Okay. Lee District is vacant. Providence District, Jeremy Hancock.
Jeremy Hancock in Falls Church.
Okay. Springfield District, Eric Thiel.
Present in Fairfax Station, Virginia, part of Springfield District.
Okay, sounds good. Sully District, David Skiles. Okay, no David Skiles. Fairfax Area Disability Services Board, Christy Garden. I believe she's actually let us know she's sick this evening, but I will just check. Christy Garden, are you not with us? Okay, she is not. Okay, Commissioner Sitnick, Pete, can you hear us now? I saw you there. Okay. All right, well, let's, we see Pete will come back later, see if he can establish his connectivity. We do have a quorum, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think we've got 5 of 8 or 5 of 7 here, so we do have a quorum. So even without Commissioner Sitnick, although again we know he's here. At this point, I will pass the virtual gavel to Secretary Roger Hoskins so that I may be heard to make the requisite motions. Roger, to you.
Thank you. I accept the personal gavel and recognize the chair, Mike Champner.
Thank you. I move that we have determined that each member's voice can be adequately heard by each other member of the commission. Yes, so moved. Roger?
Oh, come on. Have you made a motion?
Okay.
Second.
Thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Thiel. Okay. Roger? Is there discussion?
The motion has been made and seconded. Is there a discussion on this motion? If not, we'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Mr. Chairman, the motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. I next move that the state of emergency caused by the COVID-19 pandemic makes it unsafe for this commission to physically assemble and safe for the public to physically attend any such meeting. I further move that this commission may conduct this meeting electronically through a dedicated audio conferencing line And the public may access this meeting by the Microsoft Teams online platform or by calling 1-571-429-5282 and entering the phone conference ID 434-603-7568, 756 #. Phone number for ADA is 711. Access information is also available at the TAC website. It is so moved. Roger, to you.
Mr. Chairman, there's a motion on the floor. It's been moved and seconded.
Second.
Is there
No,
any
it has not been
discussion
seconded, Roger. Roger, it's not been seconded. It's not been seconded yet.
Second.
Please ask for the second. Yeah.
Oh,
I'll
is
second
there a
it,
second?
Braddock.
Thank you. It's been seconded by Commissioner Morse. Thank you.
There's been a motion on the table. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, Mr. Chairman, the motion is carried unanimously.
Thank you very much. Finally, move that all of the matters on the agenda previously furnished and posted on the TAC website are necessary for continuity in Fairfax County government and/or are statutorily required or necessary to continue operations in the discharge of this commission's lawful purposes, duties, and responsibilities. Roger, to you.
There is a movement been placed on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Thiel, thank you.
Commissioner Tiles, a motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I call the question. All those in favor of the motion as presented signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, Mr. Chairman, the motion has been carried unanimously.
Thank you very much.
The gavel to you.
Thank you. We'll now start the tax business per the approved agenda. So it is now, let's see, it's 52. Okay. I have no remarks to start this evening, although I will say thank you very much for carrying on in my absence last month. I did listen to the meeting and have read the meeting minutes, and so very pleased we were able to have a productive conversation. And it was I can't remember exactly where I was and what I was doing, but you know, I was thinking about you at least a little bit in the middle of the night as I was sleeping fitfully. So at this point, I'd like to welcome any public and guests that are here. Michael, thank you for coming. We'll be look forward to your presentation in just a moment. Are there any other members of the public or guests that are with us here this evening? Okay, fantastic. Let's move to the acceptance of the previous meeting minutes. We do have some modified minutes there. Be pleased to entertain a motion to approve the minutes as modified.
So moved.
Thank you. There's been a motion to approve the minutes as modified by Commissioner Morse. And is there a second?
Second by Pete Sitnick, Mount Vernon.
There we go. And in fact, Pete, I'll make note that that you can hear you now. So
Yeah, I was having
welcome
audio
to
problems, but I turned that off, so you don't get to look at me.
Oh, okay. Well, sorry about that. Okay, back to the meeting minutes. There's a motion on the floor that's been moved and seconded to approve the previous meeting minutes as amended. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing no discussion, we'll call the question there. All those in favor of approving the minutes from the last meeting, please say aye.
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 All right. All those opposed, please say nay. I will abstain because I'm not here last month, but the minutes are approved unanimously with one abstention from the chairman. Okay, fantastic. We're catching up on the schedule here. I know we had a productive conversation last month about a number of active transportation issues there. This sort of fits that pattern a little bit. Michael, we've been looking forward to having you come and talk for a little while. I know we didn't give you a huge amount of notice here, and I know you've got a hard stop here coming up because you've got some other activities. If not this evening, tomorrow morning. So we know we'll not keep you here too long, but very much appreciate you coming. And with that, let me not hold up the process any further. And Michael, thanks for coming, and we look forward to the presentation.
Great, thank you. Let me get the presentation going. Give me a second here. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you all see that now?
Yes.
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 Perfect, great. All right, well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm really glad to be here. My name is Michael Garino. I'm the chief of the capital project section, and what I'll go through tonight is a new project prioritization methodology that we've been working with, and we've presented to the board at the Transportation Committee to help us initially help us evaluate in a more kind of quantitative versus qualitative way and prioritize active transportation projects. And we might be able to use some of this methodology to move on to some other projects in the future, but we'll just have to see. So real quick, I'll just go over a little bit of background. As you all probably know, the board has asked County Department of Management and Budget to find up to $100 million additional money for active transportation projects. And so we do need to prioritize a list of projects based on needs. We developed a draft methodology that we presented to the Board Transportation Committee back in December. Based on feedback, we revised it and went back to the board in March this year. And so where we stand to date is right now we have over 2,800 potential projects, and these come from project requests, identified needs that we have gotten or we've identified in various studies that have gone on and things like the comprehensive plan. So what we're really looking to do is develop a way to quantitatively look at large amount of projects at one time so that we then can get down to a reasonable short list that we can look at in a more thorough way. So this is just kind of a flow chart of what we're trying to do. And we're starting just by compiling list of gaps in the network, project requests, et cetera. That's that 2,800 number I told you about. And then what we'll do is we're using GIS and a couple of tools that we've developed that I'll go to in a second to help us narrow down that list to get to a workable number. And then we will coordinate with board members and other stakeholders, which could be the TAC and should be you all, to get input on what projects are missing, also get input on priorities. And then after that, kind of as we have kind of a short list, what we'll want to do is do a little bit more work looking at ease of implementation, proximity to pedestrian generators and things like that to help us basically work with the board to get a final short list that we will then do things like put cost on there, look at environmental impacts, and then basically fill out kind of our data that then we would present to the board and the public for the board to consider, and eventually the board would then make the final recommendations on which projects will get funded. So here's just kind of a list of some of the things we're looking at. They include high-risk corridors and locations where there are safety concerns or history of safety problems. We look at areas with high densities of pedestrian trip generators. Getting some feedback. Okay, that's better. Areas of high density pedestrian trip generators, areas where there's high need for access for safe active transportation facilities. We looked at vulnerable areas and islands of disadvantage. We're also looking at priority public health locations, regional connectivity, looking at our trails network and our regional trails, and then things like, are they close to schools, parks, transits, VRE stations, things like that. So we came up with just this kind of mock table to just sort of also help demonstrate the process as we go. So can you all see my cursor here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So what here, this on the far left is sort of meant to represent sort of this group of projects we need to evaluate. So this would be a small version, but this would be equivalent to that 2,800 project request we have. And then what we do is we'll run our GIS tools, get data on these, and then those tools will help us then narrow down that list. So in this case, that would be these projects with the X's next to them. And then we work with the board and other stakeholders. This might be a good place for public engagement. And we can add in additional projects. And I'll kind of show you graphically what this is. And so with the GIS data we're going to do, it's really looking at locations. So as we go through, you'll see that it's really a location-based analysis. So we recognize that there could still be important projects and projects with a high need that are just falling outside the locations we have. So we don't want to ignore the areas outside the county or outside these locations that are defined in our tools and on the GIS data. So then with that, we would develop a short list of projects that would be more manageable, say from the 2,800, maybe down to 100, or if we have a smaller amount of money, maybe 50 projects or so. And then we do a little bit of additional work in step 3 to help prioritize those projects, continue to work with the board and stakeholders and the public, and then finally get to a short list of projects here. And then that's when we're going to look at things like constructability, environmental impacts, property impacts, order of magnitude cost. And the reason these are happening at this stage of the process is because this is stuff we have to do manually, we have to investigate, look at the data ourselves versus being able to run our GIS tools and analysis to help us prioritize and get to the short list. So with that, I'll go through just some of the tools we're using. The first two I'm going to talk about were developed, the project Nicole Winans is leading in our active transportation team. It's the active Fairfax transportation plan update. And as part of that, they developed a demand analysis and then also a needs analysis. And so what that does is basically provides a score for projects for each of those elements or each of those tools. And luckily for us, they're ready now, so we can incorporate it into this prioritization process with this new money the board is seeking to put towards active transportation projects. So the first one is the demand analysis. And with that, it looks at basically defines areas of high demand, and it does that by looking at trip generators, so population density, employment, retail jobs, transit, also looks at educational institutions, parks, regional trails, public facilities, and hospitals. And so what that does, it's defining areas where there will be a high demand for active transportation facilities. And then the next tool we're using is a needs analysis, and that looks for areas. Sure, yeah.
Back up one slide for a sec.
Yep. Yeah, no problem.
I know this is very sort of notional there, but it's intriguing. It looks like the high pedestrian demand is actually fairly close to large streets and interstates. Do you think it's sort of last mile kind of thing is what's going on? And I assume some of the others are parks and things like that.
Yeah, it's looking at density. So if you're looking at like population, employment density, retail jobs, transit, all these other elements, I think just the way the county is developed, that's a good question, and I can talk to our team about that. But my initial guess is it's just that's also where the density is and where these, where the trip generators basically have been developed over time in the county.
Okay. Thanks, appreciate it.
It's a good question. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I mean, just a comment. It looks like the most of the empty quarter in the lower part of the map, if we can borrow from a Saudi map, the empty quarter down there is the 5-acre zone, or at least a good chunk of it. Right. And the other one up there looks like Dulles.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, and those are lower density areas.
Yeah.
In the county, less development. Just making a note here. And so that'll take us then next to and so like I talked about, so they're geographically based. So, we don't want to ignore this whole part of the county when we're selecting projects. So that's what our step 2 is just sort of maybe more of our more traditional ways of, from public input, working with board offices and stakeholders, working with the knowledge our staff has on where there are important gaps in the network or safety concerns are really important projects for us to do. So the flip side is a needs analysis, and this is looking at areas where there would be a high need for safe, active transportation facilities and areas that are culturally less likely to request improvement. So maybe underserved, underrepresented areas. And here we do look at factors like race, income, disability, air quality, age. You see these other things. Nicole and her team did work very closely with One Fairfax team, actually, to develop this. And we used a lot of the information One Fairfax team has developed and added some other information that would be kind of indicators on people who would be more likely to be transit dependent or need active transportation facilities. And then so again, these define areas, kind of you got a heat map here showing areas of high need. And so with these two tools in particular, we can look at high demand areas, look at high need areas, and then also look at together projects that are scoring very well on the demand and scoring very well on the high need, and bump those up to the top of the list for us to look at when we're doing prioritizing our list. And then I'll just go through some of the other factors. And I will say for these two things, we actually get a score. So we can actually tailor our analysis. Like, so if we have a lot of money, we could say, give us something of this score and higher to get a representative number of projects. Say we had another like $500 million. So maybe we want to start with a list of 300 projects to start whittling down. We can adjust our threshold that we look for the scores to help sort of with the number of projects that we would get out of it. So we can really tailor it to kind of the funding exercises we're in, whether it's 5 million, 10, or $1 billion, depending on the level of effort and the number of projects that we need to look at. And then we have other important criteria we're looking at as well. So these are from VDOT work they've done statewide called Pedestrian Safety Action Plan corridors, or Psap. And so they've identified these corridors in the county as areas that have a history or record of safety problems. And so they're prioritized areas for safety. So again, through our GIS analysis, it'll tell us if it's in one of these corridors and what level of corridor they are, because the red ones here are the top 1%. And if you go to the green, it's the top 5% safety corridor. And so we can get kind of a ranking of the projects. These are mostly along roadways, kind of to an earlier point raised. And so while this is an important factor, again, it's not the be all and end all, because there's lots of other projects out there that we need to consider. But certainly, since safety is important, will be an important factor for us to look at. So again, if a project's either a high need or high demand or both, and in one of these safety corridors, again, that helps rise it to the top of the list.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Back on that one.
Yeah.
Top 1% meaning on VDOT's radar, or as far as identified as problem areas?
Identified as like problem and sort of translating to priority areas to help us prioritize where we would want to make safety improvements.
Gotcha. It looks like part of Richmond Highway is green, and I would have to disagree with that.
Okay, yeah, no, good point. Yeah, so I will make that note as well and see, get a better understanding for that as well.
Yeah, we just had another pedestrian killed in that section.
Right.
So, okay, thank you.
And that might be sort of a statistical type thing based on per capita, but I'll have to get more details from that.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Michael, it's Kevin. How is it? How you doing? How is it that pedestrian safety doesn't kind of move everybody else off the map? I mean, how do you say where you've identified a pedestrian safety issue and say, sorry, you just missed the cut?
Oh, well, right. So, I mean, so this will be an important factor, but we also don't, there are other projects that will improve safety, for example, that aren't in these corridors. So that's something we do have to look at. So I'll just say that this is obviously going to be a very important factor for us, but it won't necessarily trump every single project.
Okay, thank you.
You know, and again too, that's something that ultimately, you know, we can work with the board as well. But we want to be cognizant that we're not so geographically constraining where we pick projects with this analysis that we rule out something that might be an unsafe situation that could have a lot of safety improvements just because it didn't show up in our analysis.
I guess, yeah, you have I was going to ask this later, but when it's all said and done, do you have some kind of like random check mechanism that you can say this methodology worked and we didn't leave this particular project out, which obviously, you know, would qualify for funding?
Yeah, there'll be a lot of coordination and review. And sort of, again, since it's geographically based using GIS, we can't just use the analysis. So that's when we're going to rely on our more traditional methods of just knowing the area, having our list of projects that we've identified or that you or the board members have identified, either from residents or just us doing the work that we do. So that's where we're relying kind of how we would traditionally used to select projects. So we still have that as part of the process, just so those things don't get left out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on, just to give you what these maps look like. There's a vulnerability index that the county has developed that we're using that's looking at vulnerable populations. And so that's another data factor for us. And there's also islands of disadvantage that have been defined. So we want to look at those again to help serve communities who maybe are underrepresented and may need facilities, but maybe not always able to get the facilities or lobby for the facilities they need. We are working with some public health indicators. Right now, we are working with the health department to better understand this a little bit. So we work with them, we want to use it, but we're working with them to make sure we've got the right cutoffs to know like when, what's a good trigger for this to be like, yes, this is where we want to consider this as a project, or where it maybe isn't. So this is a good data set for us, but we're just working with the health department to make sure we understand the data correctly and are using it appropriately. And then we have a just sample of our countywide trails map here. So we'll, you know, if there's a segment that's going to help either connect to or connect access to a regional trail or help complete the regional trail network, that will be something we'd want to prioritize as well, because we want to work on that. So
well, let me ask
so
a question that's probably outside the scope of your work, but it occurs to me that there may be, at least for some people, a difference between trails that facilitate access to transportation, in other words, to and from work,
right, and
trails that facilitate, say, recreation. And I have no idea how those might correlate with health.
Right.
And
so
I'm wondering if anybody else does.
Yeah, I'll let anyone else speak, and then I can have a few comments on that as well. Okay, so you know, that's a very good point. I will say, you know, 10 years ago we were primarily focusing on active transportation and bicycle ped facilities, sort of as a maybe more traditionally defined transportation, like people that are using facilities to get to bus stops or to commute. But over time, we've really shifted our approach and our definition of transportation, I would say, especially when it comes to active transportation. You know, in sort of the vehicular traffic world, we always are designing for rush hour, peak periods, but really we don't necessarily need to do that, or necessarily shouldn't do that for active transportation. And really, transportation is getting people where they need to go. So that could mean going from your house to the grocery store, to a park. It could mean getting on a bus to go to work, or it could mean getting on a bus for recreation. So really for us, especially in the active transportation world, transportation's, the line, we're not defining like commuting versus recreational usage, we're really just defining trips. And so when we look at our demand models, it does look at, areas of employment, but it's also looking at shopping centers, residential, and trip generators that aren't just kind of work centric. And then another element is where some of the health indices come into place, is just, increasing active transportation can help increase access to transit and the ability for people who, especially are transit or dependent or don't have cars, it can help increase opportunities for healthy food, healthcare, things like that. So it's sort of, I think we have a little broader perspective now, and we're really like not designing for bicyclists. We tried to design for all bicyclists, maybe not just the person who commutes on the roadway on a bike lane, or maybe not a bike lane, just to make sure we've got good facilities and comfortable facilities for everybody who wants to ride a bike and everybody who wants to walk.
Thank you.
So I may have gone off on a little tangent there, but that sort of a real shift that we've done over the years.
That was kind of what I was looking to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, great. So we put together an example just so we could demonstrate graphically what this kind of looks like. Supervisor Stork did ask us to come to his office and just give him a little more detailed briefing, just because he wanted to sort of understand a little better. And I think, they were looking to see what they could do and how they could work with the data. So we put together some images. This is real data, but it's not a real analysis, if that makes sense. So what we show, and I'll just kind of walk through that, and then got a little section on next steps real quickly, and then we'll go to just more questions. So what you see here, this is, these are the project requests we've identified in the Mount Vernon district. We spent a lot of time over the last 6 to 8 months or so getting all the project requests that we had into a database and graphed geographically. The different colors and lines you see just here are different data sources and different layers in GIS, but this is what's making up our entire list of that 2,800 projects. And then just going through some examples. So if we run a composite demand analysis, and I don't know what sort of cutoff we use for this, but so looking at the demand analysis, and we created a threshold, and then what that did is shows our areas of demand if you look in Mount Vernon, and then the projects that were in there are no longer in there for this graphical example. And then so this is the projects that are in that sort of get the yes or triggered for the demand analysis. Then we run the needs analysis. You see a much greater area in Mount Vernon here. And then these are the projects that were included in the needs analysis. And then kind of so forth. These are the safety corridors. And so kind of back to your kind of question, Kevin. So I think, yes, we obviously want to look at these closely and prioritize them, but it does sort of take the universe of projects down, I think, a little too narrowly for us just to look at those. So that's why we don't want to just look at these.
Just out of the curiosity, I assume CDOT really means FCDOT?
Oh, so again, this is a group of layers. So for those who've been around for a while, back in 2013, we did what we called the County Dialogue on Transportation. And it ended up turning into our creation of our Transportation Priority Plan back in 2014, where we had $1.3 billion to allocate to different transportation projects. So the red here just means these were projects that were part of that CDOT public outreach effort to get input on what projects to fund. These were unfunded projects, so they've remained on our project list to consider for future funding.
I'll apologize for not remembering the acronym from 2013.
Oh, I do not expect anyone to remember that. The only reason I remember is I have to look stuff up there occasionally. Yeah.
If anyone would, it would be. If I can ask real quick, the red long unfunded linear project, CDOT unfunded linear project on the east part of Mount Vernon district there. Kind of curious, what is that? That looks huge.
Yeah, I don't know. It could be a corridor
You know?
type improvement, like if when for long, like it might have been like corridor improvements on Richmond Highway or something. So I have to look. I don't know
Okay.
offhand, and again, I don't have the data in front of me, so this is just a static image.
That's okay. I was
Yeah,
just
yeah,
kind
no
of
worries.
curious. Okay.
But
Hey,
it's
Michael, could you?
probably either a roadway improvement.
Sorry.
Although these are bike paths, so my guess is it's corridor improvements or maybe a very long shared use path.
Okay.
I'm going to guess on this. That's maybe down Richmond Highway, and the bottom cutoff is over towards the Parkway.
Potentially, yeah.
Probably a trail and sidewalk projects.
Yeah, and that right, and that could
Makes
have been a larger project on the CDOT layer, which has been overtaken by the bus rapid transit project, where this project probably, one thing I should say is of our 2,800 projects, it's not a vetted list. So there'll be some projects that may have already been built or in the process of being built. There might be duplications. So, but instead of trying to go through the 2,800 and filter them, what we're doing is using kind of the step one to narrow down with a subset of projects that then we'll go through and vet and do quality control on.
Hey, Michael, could we maybe take a step back? I was interested in the original database. How was that created? What are the sources that those lists of projects come from?
So we had again, there was the countywide dialogue on transportation, which was our large 2013 effort, and so those were holdover unfunded projects from then. There's various studies that we've done as part of the active transportation plan update that Nicole Winans is working on. They did a gap analysis, and so we've got those in there. Those are purple, and we've got a large unfunded project request list. We have an older unfunded project request list, so they could all be one layer, but we've brought them in at different times, and so we did keep them separate just so we could know the data source as well, so we didn't lose some of the history on them. There's also a group of pedestrian spot improvement requests. We've had an active transportation web map, which is a map that people could go on to and pick projects. So we've got, that's no longer active right now, but we've got a series of project requests from that. We have, as part of our transportation priorities plan, we did have to defer some projects because we had a funding shortfall back in 2019. So those are on there. So it's just lots of different sources. Does that answer your question?
So that includes, like, if somebody just sent on the county's website, there's a missing connection here. It just goes in over years, it's just been collected in the database, or if they email their supervisor, it gets sent to this database. Okay, got it.
Right. Exactly. Thanks. Yeah. So those requests are in there. This data set's probably well, it is definitely from early in the year. So it might be missing some recent request. And that'll be one of the things that we'd want to capture and, at a later phase, or, we'll be adding things into to update the data at various times as well.
Gotcha.
Hey,
Thanks.
Mike, how do you define the islands of disadvantage?
I don't remember. So this was another kind of equity type based thing. So they're looking at areas where there are disadvantaged populations. Again, I don't have all the details for this, and I apologize for that. So these
That's okay.
Yeah, these are existing county.
Okay.
This one might be from COG. This one might be one that COG developed. Okay. And so we're looking at all the kind of resources we have, especially if we can look at equity and various things to make sure we're not missing out on some stuff.
Hey, and Mike, I've looked at this red line long enough. That's Fort Hunt Road.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Is there some place where that would be defined and somebody could launch it our way so we know what it is?
Yeah, what we can do is we can get some links with all these things and how they're defined. So let me make a note of that. A lot of these were their own kind of efforts, and so there's a lot of information out there for
right. I'm just curious mostly out of just general curiosity as to, because particularly if the data was older, then it might be worth a second look type thing.
Right. And I will note that while I can't answer these questions, the technical people working on this can. I just don't have them here.
That's okay.
You break it up, unfortunately.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Heard that last part, yeah.
Okay, great. I just said, well, I may not have all the technical knowledge. The people who are doing the actual analysis, they are very familiar with the details.
And hey, Mike.
Yeah.
Actually, Mike Champness.
Oh, sorry.
You were breaking up earlier. So Mike G never broke up as far as I was concerned. But you break up pretty routinely tonight, which is unusual.
Mike C, you mean me?
Yeah.
That is unfortunate.
Yeah, your kids are downloading the entire Marvel universe.
When you said that, I wondered, oh, maybe my kids are doing something.
No,
I usually go by Michael, but I answered to Mike out of habit because I kind of grew up as
Mike
a Mike.
Chapness is who I meant. His kids are downloading all of Marvel's universe, and that's why his connection's busted.
I can hear you okay now. And then I'm just, again, these examples, like looking at proximity to existing or proposed regional trails. So we put a buffer on this, and then if they're included, they get tagged for that. Other things we can look at is proximity to schools. If you look at bus stops, there's a lot of bus stops. Again, these are probably roadway corridors, but as you can see, if you think about the original slide with the universe of projects, you can see like this attribute, it doesn't capture this whole area and things like that. So I just wanted to give you kind of an example of kind of what the data looks like. And hopefully you saw too how just geographically based this is. And that's why that step we have of looking at the projects we know about that are important and getting them included after we do this initial whittling down using the GIS data is important to make sure we don't just leave things out because they're not tagged by this, but they're really important tools for us to analyze a lot of projects. And what we're trying to do is provide a more data-driven, quantitative approach for us and for the board to prioritize funding and projects. And so the initial first step is really looking at what are valuable pieces of information we can get from our GIS system, along with our new active transportation demand and needs tools, so that we can actually run that on 2,800 projects. In the past, we would just have to do our best to look through all the requests, pick out ones that, with our best professional judgment were important, or if we got obviously very important to community, a lot of requests on. And so this gives us a way to, be more inclusive of the projects we let us bring in equity elements that we maybe weren't able to look at before, and then really help us manage a larger subset and, again, more data-driven process. So where we are right now in the process, the board has $5 million right now that we're looking at kind of quicker hit projects like priority crosswalk improvements, maybe some maintenance projects, maybe some priority linear projects we can initiate. We're doing that work now, really looking at quick hits. And then that's going on as we finalize this methodology. And then we would go to kind of step one, which is the spatial analysis that I just described to start get us down with that list to start populating data and come up with a smaller subset of projects that we can work with and analyze to eventually develop a short list. So where we are now is I think we're in the middle of finalizing the methodology, and we're doing that basically by doing some sensitivity testing and starting to running the model, getting the data. It's going well, it's working, it's doing what we want it to do. But we're just, like I said, we're following up with the health department, make sure we're using that data correctly. And then so my priorities was $5 million first, but then what we'll be doing is getting ready to do this spatial analysis hopefully pretty soon, so we can run that on the 2,800 projects, then to start coming up with a short list that then we can work with the board and stakeholders on to develop a short list for funding. Then we'll provide the more traditional type data with cost and things that we used to do in the past, and then after that, take them to the board for funding. Okay, so with that, that's all I got. So let's see if you all have any other questions.
I'm glad you
guys,
mentioned the quick hits. Just for perspective, we have there's a grant for 3 crossings not too far from me, close to our elementary school, 3 crossings, and the budget, which requires some planning costs, is $2 million. And so $5 million goes pretty quickly.
Yeah, so Chris Wells and Lauren Delmar did a lot of work on that sort of quick hit list we're developing. We're actually getting ready to send sort of a draft of a longer list that will whittle down to the board offices. They've looked at crosswalk improvements, things we can do, hopefully all within the right of way. We've started meeting with VDOT. So that we're looking at really the smaller scale ones. Like, so a $2 million project we think would go into maybe the other 95 million we'll be getting for consideration. And because with just 5 million, if you obviously want to do some in every district, that's, that doesn't add up to a lot of money. So we're really looking for some of the smaller ones for this initial 5 million, just so we can get, find some priority, either crosswalks we can improve to make safer, or get some crosswalks in where we need them, that we can do quickly. And in the meantime, we're finalizing our methodology to run it and help the board prioritize projects for the other 95 million. All right, I see some hands raised, so I guess I'll call on them since I'm presenting, if that's okay with you guys. So I think I might do this time. So I think Kevin, you're up next, and then Eric.
In your closing sentence there, did I understand correctly that the 5 million is not going to get the full vetting that the 100 million will get, just to get these out the door?
Correct. Right. So like sort of our staff, like Chris and Lauren, they did a review. Some of those projects are definitely on the project request list, so they're part of that 2,800, but they really were looking at projects they knew about, and these sort of priority projects that are around, but are things that we can do that, because you all know we could easily spend 5 million on 1 to 3 projects. And so we really want to try to get this out. The board wanted us to do that, because we did ask the board, like, do you want us to, try to do some quick hits, get some stuff out on the street, or we can, start building up money as more money comes in to do larger projects. And the board said 5 million now, this other money we'll use for the more traditional type projects.
Got it. Thanks.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Eric.
So you guys have a big database there, and then I assume that's displayed in ArcGIS or some other similar map structure.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because of the licensing with the software, I assume that it's not available. The information is not easily accessible to the public.
Right now it is not. You can make data available. We just kind of finished getting all this data mapped and in the database. So I think that may be where we want to go. There is some stuff out there. There are some of this data out there, but this whole subset of data is not out there like in a web map that you can view. So right now, no, but it's not necessarily a software kind of constraint. It's just, we'd have to work with our county Department of Information Technology to do what we need to do to make the data available on a public web map, and we're just not there yet. Mm-hmm. I think that is something we do want to look at down the road. I would love to get to a point personally where we've got like a request system that you can see where other requests are, and potentially you could like a request and support a request or add a request in. But we're just not there yet, but that's kind of a longer term goal we'd like to work towards.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Any other questions? I do have one right here. Michael, thanks very much for participating. It's unfortunate that it appears that I'm the problem here, or at least I have a problem in terms of the connectivity. So hopefully you can hear me here.
I can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Recognize that there's a lot of elements here. We've got 2,800 projects, various sorts, various types. You know, the charts clearly showed that deciding how to prioritize across those things is difficult. You know, I see a lot of the elements here, but I'm wondering, you know, this is the, you know, sort of the you know, the hard question. I know, you know, how do you plan to try and come up with a methodology that sort of balances these sort of things? Is it something where you just have to sort of describe the various characteristics, have a big discussion about it with commissioners, I'm sorry, with Board of Supervisors members, or is there some level of you know, sort of a numerical analysis you can put there to sort of do some prioritization so that you know, you're doing a kind of a triage?
I think we can do a little bit of both. So some of the tools already kind of have a scoring factor in it. Others will be maybe more qualitative in the end, like close to school. It's almost like a yes/no kind of column. You know, the way we used to do this and the way we did this last time, and this was back in 2014 when we had like a large amount of new money for active transportation projects, we basically gave the board, you know, we developed a short list of projects just by staff review, kind of known projects, doing our own, you know, analysis, but it wasn't like a GIS, you know, analysis where we have a scoring system or these data tools we had. And then so we had and we work with board offices, you know, this is what we're considering as our universe of unfunded projects. And then we took that out to the public, got public input, and then that became a factor we would consider. And at the end, we kind of had like a matrix, if you will, like here are our projects. It got this many yes votes. It's, you know, close to a school, you know, et cetera. Like a lot of these elements they had with these checkboxes. I mean, what we'll be able to do is basically produce the same kind of table. And, you know, one thing I didn't point out, and let me just back up a little bit here real quick. You know, I mentioned kind of public involvement, but we've got a bar here for public engagement. And then if you go to our kind of graphical or table version of this, again, there's a bar at the bottom for public engagement. You know, another thing that I think we've advanced a lot with DOT and the county is just, you know, we have a marketing communications team that are much more involved in our projects, and our larger projects and our larger efforts, they create a marketing strategy and a public involvement strategy. And so this whole thing, along with, you know, we can scale, like if we've got 100 million, let's say, okay, if we got 100 million, we think we can do 50 projects with that. Let's start with maybe 100 projects on our short list to sort of go to the community on, get them put on, and then we'll want to whittle that down to 50. If we've got 10 times that, we start with 1,000 projects and whittle that down. You know, and we can definitely, and with the scale of what we're doing, we can gauge our level of public involvement. So we'll be working with the board on what kind of public involvement they want for this $5 million, but I would imagine it would be much less than, say, the 95 million we're going to allocate. That will be up to the board. You know, there's logical points in this process where we want public involvement. Obviously, when we've got this short list here, it's a good spot. And when we're going to other stakeholders in the board, this seems like a logical place to go to the public with a list of projects, get their input. And that's much more how we would traditionally do it. And then my long-winded point of this is when we're said and done and we're over here, we've got a table of projects with data populated, and it will look very much like we had before. And then that just gives the board and the public information, the one for the public, for you all to provide your comments, your priorities, and then that all can go to the board and gives them information they can use to make funding decisions. And it also helps us with, like, you know, us saying, you know, these are what we think the top priorities are based on all of this. The one difference is we'll have some more data-driven things. We'll say this, like we'll know this project. So we've got this project high because it's high on the demand, high on needs, and it's in a safety corridor. like a high need safety corridor. So that obviously those projects would rise probably to high priority based on that. But again, then that all can be populated, and then at any point in the process, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that that's a good point. You're talking about the safety corridor, things like that. We're talking about the safety aspect. And I know this chart that we're looking at here is not definitive, but it does seem that, safe, might be an important factor here to add it as well.
Yeah, it'll be in there.
As I'm looking at it, will be okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was more to try to, when we were explaining this to the board, this was more just to show the whittling down of the projects to the short list. But the point I was trying to make is, we'll have like a list of projects, and with basically another matrix with all this data populated at the end of the day. And then, if we get towards the end and we've got, okay, this is our final short list, we may want to go back out to the public again at that point. And if we end up adding new projects, we'll just run the analysis, we'll get the data on that project, and we just add it to the table.
Okay. One quick observation. I see Eric, I think you've got your hand up again, or I'm not sure if you kept it up, but one thing I'm thinking about is that
no, I failed and left it up. My bad.
But Pete's up in solidarity. So just an observation here is that recognize there's not a close correlation, but there is a bit of a correlation between sort of some of the transportation corridors, whether it's metro or perhaps or certainly roads and things like that. Recognizing that the pedestrian trip generator is going to trip more often, so to speak, that's closer to those locations. But I think also that might be a way to areas where people to metro stations, bus areas, things like that, where some active transportation connections might help folks get to group transportation. That might be a factor as well too. So you've got some sort of a use case piece of this. Just a thought as you put your selection criteria together.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that stuff is in there. And I would say those were elements we've traditionally looked at. We'll continue to do. The data helps us with that and helps quantify a bit. We'll look at how close it is to a transit stop, for example, as part of that last mile or first mile element. But the other side of it too that I really like now is that we're able to look at the needs analysis tool. I'm very excited about, and it lets us look at populations in areas of the county that have a high need for improvements to facilities that maybe we wouldn't necessarily have caught in the past. So that's like an exciting, I think, part of this new methodology that is really good.
Okay. I appreciate that, Mike. I have one other little question, but I'll defer to Pete. I know you had your hand up.
I did have it up, but you asked basically my question. So good job there.
There we go.
But linking into it, one thing that I don't know how it would fit into this, but one thing I'd like to see is something called making a place. And to some degrees, some of what you're talking about, safety corridors and such, kind of go hand in hand with making place. Places where destinations are good, where people want to go to those spots and be safe when they get there. So I don't know how to link it into this, but if that would be a consideration in some sort in the evaluation, that it might be worthwhile.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. And I think certainly when we get to the projects that are funded and on the implementation side, that is something we definitely want to look at with how we design it, what facilities we include. Because the project request might be, we need a facility to get bicyclists and pedestrians through this gap or get them to this location. But then when you actually get into scoping the project, which we can look at later when you're funded in particular, but we can start looking at that as we're developing an order of magnitude cost estimate before the board does it. That's where we start putting in pieces of, yeah, this project, it shouldn't just be a trail. We need to look at other improvements if we're in a community revitalization area where we would want to incorporate those elements and stuff. So it's a very good point. And we'll make a note of that. And I think sort of it is something we should definitely look at when we're looking at scopes and preparing order of magnitude costs as we're in the later stages of the process.
Well, thank
Appreciate
you.
that. Appreciate that. Kevin, you got your hand up. We'll probably need to.
Yeah, I guess, Michael, I guess
Sorry.
the one thing you
Go ahead.
definitely hoping to avoid is you're at the final presentation of the list of the Board of Supervisors, and you get a supervisor that says, great presentation, put a lot of work into it, but can you explain to me why this particular project in my district, didn't make the list? I just don't understand it.
Right. Well, and I'll just go back to the 2014 was, unfortunately, the last time where we had a large amount of money to allocate to projects. Before we went to the board, we met with every board member individually, met with the chairman, and so we had the board priorities, and so we'll try to do that again. That's the last thing we want to do. So by the time we're presenting this package to the board to consider for funding, there should not be any surprises on the list for what they're looking at.
Good to know. Thank you.
Appreciate it. I think Michael, we've kept you a little late. Appreciate it. We'll just make a quick observation that understand. Like I say, there's a lot of factors in here, and you've talked about it, and excellent work to try and bring this together. But actually, to pick up on Kevin's point, I think that the more you're able to describe some of these factors that we've talked about, whether it's safety,
right,
or I think that's something tangible that the supervisors can sink their teeth into a little bit, so that they can then try and balance some of those. There'll be other factors there as well too. Maybe there's a huge pile of miscellaneous, so to speak, but the more in which you can articulate some of the specific underlying factors, some of the critical ones, I think that would be helpful. Last question I've got is what your schedule is for taking this to the board. When do you think you're going to be able to get there?
So what we've basically gone to the board with methodology and have their blessing to sort of move forward with it. So that's why we're starting to test it. We're kind of by finalizing, we're running the model. We're just making sure we've got understanding the data correctly, fine tuning. But we basically have the board's blessing to go ahead and do this. And so the board's expecting us to come back to them with a list of projects based on this at some point, which we're working to do. Our priority now is getting that list for the 5 million out, but we are working on this at the same time.
I see Eric's hand up, but very quickly, what kind of schedule are you on to go back to the board with? I guess it sounds like perhaps a prioritization to 5 million.
Yeah, we're really as soon as possible. So we want to get a draft list out to get some input, and then, September, October. I think we'd love to go September. We just got to continue some coordination with VDOT, continue vetting the sites. So, really as soon as we can is the answer for that one.
Okay. Eric, I see you've got a question.
Yeah, kind of an observation about trying to rank and score systems. There's a famous quote from Feynman, who was a quantum physics professor at Caltech. And basically he said, yeah, anyone who says they understand quantum mechanics just demonstrated that they don't. And so that I'll bend that a little bit and say that anybody who says they have a perfect ranking system doesn't understand ranking systems, because I've been involved in many times over the years for all kinds of big decision things, multi-billion-dollar government, federal government investment things. And there's always a ranking system and all this scoring, and you can always break it. It's never perfect.
Right.
So you probably already discovered that, but no one has one that's perfect. And so, they're all informative. but they're all imperfect. And if that hadn't, you know, steamrollered you guys, there's just no way around it.
Well, and I agree completely. And so one thing I did not want and we did not do is we don't have anything that says this project's an 89, this project's an 88. So we recommend the one that scored 89. That's why we've got some factors that do rank and score, but they're one of many factors. But then we don't also ignore our other traditional areas of input, community priorities, things that we know about as well that are important, or we know are safety issues. And so we haven't forgotten those things, and there's no one element or one set of data that's driving the process. Again, we're going to have a table, and we're going to be able to look at that. And, you know, and it might be like we're prioritizing safety, so we're really focusing on those safety corridors or other known safety locations, or we're prioritizing access to schools right now. So that's a key factor. You know, it's really how we do the final selection isn't going to be set in stone, and those priorities could change over time. But we're providing several points of data with multiple tools to help us make more informed decisions. But it's, yeah, we're not putting stuff into a black box that turns out a score and then we just say, yeah, we're doing that.
And even if you did, what you'll find is that if you experiment with it enough, a 90 and a 50 are probably discriminable, but a 90 and an 89, no, because it's fuzzy, right? So
right.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, and
thanks.
you know, like right, and the way things like, so the way the demand analysis works, for example, it kind of defines an area, but you basically like if you want to get a certain, say we want to get like the top 50 projects in a district looking at the demand model, we're not going to get the top 50. It's really like you go to scoring thresholds and that data set might be 38. If you go 1 point more down, it might give you now 60 projects. So it's not it doesn't rank the projects relative to each other on an individual basis. It more gives you a group of higher priority projects, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, but it's
Thank
a very good point, and we did not want to. We've got data that relatively ranks projects to each other, but it's not a scoring system overall to determine a priority.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it very much, Michael. I think
Yeah, thank you. It's a good discussion.
I think after you've briefed the board, I'm very interested in having you come back, perhaps, or at least show us what what you were able to come up with and how how it was received and things like that. So sometime in the fall, hopefully, wish you luck there. You're welcome to come back if you want to ask more questions or run something by us. But otherwise, good luck as you go to the board, and look forward to again having you back and seeing how things went there. Very interested to see some of the details of the methodology.
Great. Yeah, sounds good. We'll let Calvin know. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks.
I want the last words to you to be Braddock Road will rise again.
That's right. We're still working on that. So Kevin and I spent
last words. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Kevin and I spent 3 years together working on a Braddock Road task force. Several years. It's good process. Yeah. All right. Thanks all very much.
Well, Michael, thanks. Thanks so much, very much to go. Thanks for sticking around with us there.
Yeah, no worries. It's great.
So good evening.
Right, good night.
All right. A couple internal items here coming up next. A little behind, but I think we can catch up a little bit here. I don't think this is going to be too terribly lengthy for what we can do this evening. Certainly, the first is the officers' election announcement. Let me check here. Am I breaking in and out? Can folks hear me okay?
Still hear you okay.
Okay.
We can hear you well enough.
Can hear you.
Okay. What is happening? There's no changes from what I can tell from the past, and it's always worked fine in the past.
Well, you're freezing once in a while. Your dialogue goes on, but then you kind of hold your head still like they got it in a vice, and then you move again, like the system's buffering. Maybe your kids are trying to download the universe. Who knows?
Always a chance. Well, I'll I'll look and see. I'll look and see.
It's not
Um,
disturbing anything, so press on.
okay, well, let's we'll do the best we can. I've checked the bylaws to remind ourselves how this works. What we do is we accept nominations for chair in one meeting, and then we vote on the chair in the next meeting. And then at that point, the chair then nominates commissioners for the vice chair and the recording secretary, and then we can vote on those members in that meeting. So that means we're not going to be able to elect a chair this evening. What we do need to do is nominate one or a slate of possible chairs. And so I guess at this point, maybe I'll call upon our recording secretary, acting vice chair, Roger Hoskin, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would like to place into nomination our incumbent chairman, Michael Champness.
Second.
Thank you so much. I don't think we need to vote on this, but it is the name is in nomination. I gratefully accept the nomination for consideration for chair at the next meeting. Is there any other commissioners who would like to nominate any other commissioners? Oh, Roger, go ahead, sir.
Yes, I move that the nominations be closed.
All right, there's been a motion on the floor that the nominations be closed. Is there any debate on the motion to close nominations for chair? Hearing none, call the question. All those in favor of closing the nominations for chairs, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Okay, nominations for chair are now closed. So we have one commissioner nominated, yours truly. Thank you very much, Commissioner Hoskin and my fellow colleagues. Appreciate your vote of confidence there. So the vote next month will be on a single candidate. And then at that point, I will make nominations for the vice chair and the recording secretary. Now I will say that have had some conversations with folks. Some of the one with Roger there. Is there anybody who would like to speak up, perhaps, about the vice chair and or the recording secretary position?
I think Commissioner Sitnik would be a good vice chair.
Ouch. Thank you, Kevin. Frankly, I would be honored to serve if you guys want me as vice chair. So I appreciate that.
Not a formal nomination, but certainly I will admit, Kevin, that's exactly what I was thinking too. And Pete and I have had a couple conversations there, and I did listen to the meeting last time and heard that there was some discussion, informal discussion about the position that of course makes. So I think that that makes perfect sense. I will say if there's another commissioner that is interested in serving, either as the vice chair or, quite honestly, we've got plenty of other things we could be doing, and we'll be talking about that in a minute. Please do let me know. You want to come to me offline. If I don't hear any other volunteers or nominations for vice chair, then it is my intent to nominate Commissioner Sitnik for vice chair at our next meeting. That said, as long as we're putting the cards on the table here, it is also my intent to nominate Commissioner Hoskin to continue in his role as recording secretary. Now, Roger, despite your connectivity challenges, we very much, of course, appreciate your participation in meeting minutes. We know that is a bit of a burden there, and we thank you very much for. So
I've had to work on again tonight, and one of these days I'll get it all figured out. It didn't take long. I probably have to have a consultation with Calvin at some point. But this is
okay.
Mike, I guess Roger's revenge is that you started to break up a little bit there again at the end. So
True.
Yeah, right when I said it was my intent to nominate Roger as recording secretary in a month. That's exactly
There he goes.
the time. So, and unfortunately, because he was breaking up for me, I didn't hear him complain about the job. So that's good. Okay. Well, I think that's the business we need to do for the election announcement. We'll be prepared to approve our slate of officers at our next meeting. So next, moving on to the next topic, remote meeting policies. We continue to meet remotely. Very glad we can do so. There have been some adjustments to the policy. County attorney has, I say suggested because that's officially the word, but in actual fact, we really probably don't have much choice. That said, if there are some things in there in particular that do cause us some concern, we can raise that with the attorney. As I've looked at it, I don't see anything that jumps out at me, but Calvin, if I could call on you, please, just to describe, I know you sent out the email, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but would like you to describe a little bit, Calvin, some of the differences between the current policies we have and the new ones. The attorneys are asking us to.
Give me a second.
Sure. Thanks, Calvin. I appreciate it. Let's see here. I'm looking up your email, Calvin.
Sorry, I'm trying to locate my
Sorry,
email.
I should have given you a heads up. It's my fault, Calvin, for not warning you what I was going to do here. So that's not fair.
I think I'll just raise a couple areas
Please do.
that are I think there are improvements. I think we had raised them last time, but we weren't able to change them. The first is that the notice doesn't have to be provided to the director of the Department of Transportation rather than the staff, which I think we had tried to change last time, but we were limited. So it does change that. And then it does change the disclosure on the location. I think our old policy said the specific location, and this is, I think, aligns more with the statute, which is just your general location.
Yes. Thanks, Jeremy. I know also one thing that they did keep, which is probably not a surprise, is for a hybrid meeting, we still need to have a physical quorum, and then the rest can be done remotely. So we'll continue to have to ask commissioners if you ever have, when we have a meeting together again. If you're not able to be there in person and you want to participate remotely, we will need to coordinate that. But that's as before.
Mike, I think one of the main things
I think
is that
one thing that, sorry, yes, go ahead, Kyle.
I'm sorry. One of the main thing is that instead of before that, anyone just can give you a call and say that, I'm going to participate remotely. They have to put that in writing, either by a text, by email, or a letter or something like that. So that's one of the changes, the big changes, I think, yeah. And some of the changes regarding to the minutes, we already done that. We have to post a minute within like 7 days of after the meeting.
How do you post the minutes 7 days after the meeting if they're not approved until the next meeting?
I mean, no, after you approve the meeting, I'm sorry, after you approve the minute, yes.
Got it.
So, some committee, they meet like once a year. So they ask, what happened to that? They say, yeah, after you approve the minute, like a year later, you have 7 days to post it. So we are already in compliance, and we have all the announcement. We have like to do it like 3 business days before the meeting. We have to post it online, post the paper copy in our building. Yeah, and then our website. Yeah. So pretty much that. It's just one of the updates is that for the member that if their primary residence is like 65 miles away from the meeting location, they have an option to do that. Yeah, but it's not applied to any one of us here. Yeah.
None of us are more than 5 miles away, Mount Vernon or Hunter Mill
65.
from the
Yeah.
headquarters.
I think to Mike's comment about assuring a quorum in person. So I think that the second policy, just to combine them, does allow remote participation, and so we get 3 meetings per year, and so that would some background. So that would allow us, if we weren't going to get quorum, we could still go online.
That was my fault. Sorry. Go ahead, Jeremy. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, yeah, no worries. I was just saying that if we didn't get a quorum, the new policy would allow us to go online because we'll get 3 virtual meetings per year. That they just can't be consecutive.
Okay. And the one thing we're also not sure, because we'll have to see how things go, is we're still operating under pandemic rules. So these are not sort of, my expectation is these are not counting as sort of a preferable remote meeting. So again, we will have to coordinate a little bit, and I think that perhaps come our December meeting, we might want to try and get together and do something afterwards. We'll talk about that as things get closer, but certainly we can we can work it out. But again, unless there's something in there that is of significant consequence, I think we're expectation is we'll just say say yes. In fact, I don't recall us making any changes to the policies that the county attorney gave us last time. So with that as a backdrop, I think it's possible we could consider adopting these remote meeting policies. We certainly could defer it if we feel we need to, but be pleased to entertain a motion to approve the 2 remote meeting policies, the remote participation of members in the all virtual public meetings policy and block, if there's a commissioner that's willing to make that motion. Another who's
So
going to. Okay, so moved by Commissioner Thiel and seconded by Commissioner Morse. I believe I've got that correct.
I think Sitnick was in there somewhere, but I'll leave it to the chair to decide who made the motion.
I think it was Kevin. I was completely quiet.
Okay. Well, we have a motion on the floor to approve the 2 remote meeting policies en bloc, remote participation of members policy, all virtual public meetings policy. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, and all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All those opposed, please say nay. Okay. Any abstentions? If not, the motion carries unanimously, and we have now adopted a revised remote meeting policies. Appreciate that very much. So, okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, public comment period. I don't believe there wasn't before. I wouldn't think there is now, but let me check to see. Are there any members of the general public here with us this evening who would like to speak? Okay. Let's move on to the next other business and announcements. First is the agenda for the August 2022 TAC meeting. As you can see, there's no specific recommendations there. But one thing I will say, and I'm glad, Marcus, I saw that you were with us earlier. I hope you still are. And Kevin, I can see you. I've been intrigued and looking forward to trying to have put on the agenda the bus services from underserved areas of the county. Kevin, I know that's something you've talked about often. Marcus, I remember a couple months ago we had a conversation. I know that's an interest of yours. What I was hoping to do was sort of use your expertise and interest to help us shape a little bit what that conversation ought to be, or at least sort of have a look, make sure we've got the right kind of folks there. Marcus, again, I know with your background there, I'm not sure exactly what you'd like to bring, but would welcome your participation, helping to shape that and help bring the right folks in from the county. So with that, Kevin, I'll turn it to you to see what you think, and then Marcus would very much appreciate your views as well too. What do you think, Kevin? Should we do that next month?
Yeah, that would be fine with me. I'm glad you brought it up. I guess Marcus is going to have to check with Michael Fushelaw,
Yeah,
who was originally very eager to come, and then I think Tom put the brakes on it until they had a chance to go before the board. I think they've been before the BTC, but Marcus, do you know of anything offhand that would prevent us from doing it next month?
I wouldn't be able to necessarily say a time frame. I mean, it's worth an opportunity to look into it. I know that was something that was discussed as far as potential things that may be coming down the pike that, at some point in the future. My initial conversation with Mike, that kind of also chained into individuals that were commuting into Fairfax from out of the jurisdiction. So it ultimately is beneficial for obviously things that take place within Fairfax that might be served for different areas, but it's also a larger conversation that people that are coming from different locations that have interest in getting to Fairfax were, looking for different options. So, ultimately the more service that becomes available, I think it just opens up the opportunity for different people to, take a step back and look at their commute and ultimately identify what's the best course of action for their commute. So, but I think it's worth, something to kind of look, speak to Mike about and see if that information is available for, presentation, or if it's something that they're still in the process of working on, though.
Okay, so two things there. I'd say I don't mind expanding it to, people coming from outside the county, as long as that discussion is not at the expense of Fairfax County residents in underserved areas that need to get to job centers. That has to be paramount.
Right. No, I agree. I think, obviously starting in Fairfax will probably be the best course of action, and seeing what potential opportunity to present themselves from that point might, will be a little bit better down the line.
Okay, and just secondly, which may be obvious, but if you could find out sooner than later and let the chairman know, so if there is a reason that we can't put it on, that he can quickly go down the list and get the next item up.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely reach out to Mike and see, what will be the possibilities of having to pull something together and kind of get back to you through Calvin.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, no worries.
I appreciate that. And Marcus, if you could, and thanks, Kevin, for the suggestion. Excellent one. I do want to keep involved, see what's going on, but please include Kevin in emails as well. There'll only be two of us, so that's okay. Only two commissioners there.
Sure.
That way, as it's coming together, if Kevin has questions or points he wants to make, he can see how it's developing. Because being the eternal optimist, I think we'll probably be able to do it. Then we want to make sure that we're focusing on the the right balance, or at least understand what's going to be discussed and where we're going to go and things like that.
Okay, absolutely.
Thanks.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Marcus. Really appreciate it.
No problem at all.
Okay. That was what I was hoping to do for August. We know we're not quite there yet, but optimistic we'll be able to try and do something. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I guess a little bit into some other meetings too, and that is when you look at the agenda, reminded that we are meeting with the Board of Supervisors on September 30th. So we obviously briefed our work plan back in March. So this is not a work plan presentation. This is going to be a presentation of what we'd like to talk to them about. And so I know we won't have much time, but the mere fact we have some time is very, you know, we're honored to have the time, want to take good advantage of it. So, you know me, my first thought was going to be to look at the work plan and maybe pick some areas. We've looked at a lot of active transportation things today. It's unfortunate that our two commissioners that are sort of overseeing the active transportation area, Commissioner Westenhoff, Commissioner Glenn, have both resigned. So we're leaderless, coordinatorless in that area right now.
Commissioner Glenn resigned?
Yes, she did. Yes,
When
she
did that? I didn't see that.
Oh, in fact, well, let me back up a little bit here. Received, in fact, Calvin, what are you aware of in the official notification process? Because it's my understanding both Commissioner Westenhoff and Commissioner Glenn have both resigned, and in fact, that's the way the.
I think Kelly informed her district office that she resigned, and I don't know exactly the exact day, but it was before the meeting.
Yeah.
And I would assume that she would resign immediately, but she later emailed me asking me for where's the meeting, where's the agenda, and I told her that I thought you resigned. That's why I didn't put your email into the email list, and then I asked her if she wanted to continue the meeting with us. She's welcome to, but she said, okay, that's fine. I thought that, you know, this would be my last meeting, but I didn't get that part from the district office, so I thought she resigned. That means.
Was this Alexis, Commissioner Glenn, you're talking about?
Alexis resigned, I think, the day after our meeting in June.
Yes.
Yeah, the next day, the very next day.
Were we notified? I'm just wondering. I mean,
She
I'd be very
notified. I think she notified her supervisor.
Okay. Because I know Kelly we knew about and Mary Pauline, but I didn't know about Alexis. So I'm sorry to hear that, because she was, yeah, you know, a big contributor on certain topics.
I am too, and in fact, I will. Sorry for not making an announcement or asking Calvin to make an announcement there. That's my bad. But yes, I did see an email that she sent to her not the supervisor, but somebody on her supervisor staff, tendering her resignation. So I actually reached out to Alexis, expressed my disappointment that she's decided to step down. Kevin, you're right. She's been a good contributor. One of the things that was a little disconcerting about her resignation is she was saying that I wasn't sure how much we were dedicated to advising the Board of Supervisors, and I thought that, in my view, I thought that was pretty clear. That's exactly what we're trying to do. But everybody has their views and things they're trying to do. So, Kelly, Commissioner Westenhoff, I was expecting that too. I guess she made some noises there. But Calvin, when you were talking about somebody coming back to the meeting, was that Kelly or was that Alexis you're talking about?
It was Kelly. Yeah.
Okay.
It was Kelly. She resigned before the June meeting. Yeah.
Okay.
I thought, I don't know how much you want to discuss it, but I thought Kelly was maybe workload or family commitments or something. I didn't know she had a problem with the direction of the commission.
No, it was Alexis had the problem with the direction.
But just one interesting point there, Mr. Chairman, is that one of her most recent ones was the safe routes to school, which the commission immediately took on and was successful on. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there. I'm just sorry to hear that.
I feel exactly the same. And in my note to mention that as well, that I felt that some of the active transportation activities she'd been involved in, the commission had been involved in, and yes, safe routes to schools in particular was something that we're making progress on. So I think there is a disconnect there. I'll leave it at that, just because it's impossible to really ascertain how a commissioner feels, and I think everybody understands it's sort of inappropriate to sort of speculate, but I did want to mention that, because I think that one, it never hurts to sort of check ourselves and make sure we still believe we're doing the right thing in the right way, and I think we are. But times like this, it doesn't hurt to just sort of be sure. But I think also, as we go into the presentation to the Board of Supervisors on the 30th of September, here we have another opportunity to show some advice there. So, do want to, and I will be thinking about the, topics to discuss, and I'll be honest, certainly be consulting with Rachel as well. We have our August meeting, and then our September meeting, and then we have the presentation on the 30th. Which, by the way, is the same day as the Board Transportation Committee meeting itself. So I'm probably just going to try and take work off that day and going into everything. So everybody's invited to come to that. But September 30th is sort of a big transportation day for the board.
And it's so we're not officially appearing before the BTC. It's before the Board of Supervisors. The full.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Okay.
I think people with different grouping. Yes.
Well, I'm glad we have the September meeting as well, because I honestly didn't recall that we were coming back to the board this soon. So I'm a little, if we had to do it tomorrow, I think we'd be a little hard pressed to
Well, what's our, Kevin?
We'd be a little hard pressed for the topics. But the other thing is, do you think it's going to be another situation where, maybe the 15 minutes they thought we have, if we're going to be down to, 5 or 10 before it's lunchtime for them, and
well, probably, but I will say, and I don't mean to make light of this, it won't be before lunchtime, because the BTC is before lunch. The board meeting itself is after lunch. So we'll get them when they're full of, they're somnolent and nodding off. I'm joking. I shouldn't. But no, but Kevin, I think we should not be surprised if we don't end up having much time there.
But just to frame it again, this is our chance to say what we want from the board, or
we've not been given a sort of a specific topic they want us to talk about. I think it's I want to reach out to Mr. Alcorn, get some views there as well. It's really that, but it's also not that they're picking us out of all of the boards and commissions to come and talk to them. They do this with all of them at some point, and this is our turn.
Okay. Well, anything you want to put out between now and then that might help us frame our questions or requests, we'll look forward to it.
Yeah, well, we'll obviously need to discuss this next month. So we'll certainly have some suggestions there. But please, I do encourage commissioners, yes, look at the work plan, but also other things that you think could be good topics of discussion. And please don't just wait till next month's meeting to let me know. So if you can, send me an email with, or we can call me certainly, about your ideas there, so we can think about them there. But absent any other inputs, then absolutely next month we'll have some suggestions for what that at the board on the 30th needs to look like. I think we got put on their agenda maybe a month or two ago, but I know we didn't talk about it last month, but now it's time.
If I may, just on the
Sure.
resignation of Alexis, she did bring a lot to the table. Shame she's she's gone. She may have resignation regret, and I hope that's the case, and maybe she'll come back again, because like Kevin said, and we all know, that safe routes to school, she championed, we supported, and then the Board of Supervisors and all did the right thing. So that's a definite win. That's a job well done. So, and as far as September, end of September, I think it was really good to have the group that we had, Michael, today, talking with us. If we can somehow glean some of his information beforehand, on some of these projects that they are going to put out there, top and front, we might want to take a look at some of those and actually line up with them. So just a thought.
I think also, and I will just make this observation, one of the things we've tried to do is get more towards leading edge on things like making place and road diets and things like that. So I think this would be an opportunity for us to perhaps get into a little bit more depth, not a huge amount of depth, but more depth on some of those newer ideas and actually ways to sort of move them forward. When we talked in the work plan, one of the things we discussed was doing things. The different parts of the county have different needs, different situations. So we might be able to get into a bit more detail on that, or a bit more the strategy of how we're approaching certain things. So, for instance, there is a mosaic district. Where's the where's the next place where there's some opportunities to do more making place and things like that. The Route 1 corridor is probably not it, because that's pretty much a done deal. But there are other places where they talked about having some taking steps to move in that new direction. And I think that's the general area I think we should look at. That's where I'll be looking first, is trying to showcase a little bit more execution, or try to set some things up for to move forward in these important areas. So I know that's very squishy. That's not anything we can take to the board yet, but that's kind of what I'm thinking right at the moment. Okay. So put your thinking caps on, and we'll talk next month about that. We'll talk about that next month. The next thing I was going to let's see, that that's sort of the TAC meetings for the remainder of 2022. I think that we can talk about sort of the September meeting is probably going to be getting ready for the board, I would think. And so anything we put on the agenda is going to have that board meeting in mind. And so I don't think specifically now. We'll see what comes out of August, and then we'll pick something then. Next is the chair's report. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was the update to the Board of Supervisors. We've done that. Another is we do need to give the TAC award at some point, and I think we should do that separately. I'm not sure they would let us do it on the September 30th. I don't think we want to do that on the 30th, because I think that time in front of the board is precious. We need to take advantage of to talk about some things we want to talk about. But we do need to make arrangements to give out the 2021 TAC award. And then also, it's 2022, and so we need to go forward with that as well too. So I apologize for not remembering exactly where we stand. It's been a little while since we've talked about it, and I didn't get a chance to look back there. But we will need to make arrangements to give out the 2021 TAC award as well. So, and maybe, well, anyway, we'll have to do that as well. So, remind me if I could. I thought we had. We had a 2021 TAC award committee. Do we have I think we have a 2020, just complete on that. My apologies. Remind me where we stand on the 2022 TAC award.
We don't have the committee for the new one for the 2022.
Okay.
So we need to have a subcommittee for that for
right.
the TAC award. Yeah.
Isn't it? I think isn't. Because I think I'm sorry, I'm breaking up, but I think we wanted it to be sort of for the calendar year, those two. So I think we probably don't need to send out the invitations or yet for the TAC award, but we will probably need to do it, certainly by this fall, so that we can give the award out at the end of the year.
Yes, and I will check with the clerk to the board, see what day we can make the presentation of the 2021. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And actually, Calvin, if you could talk to the clerk about what expectations, if any, there are for our presentation. I think it's up to us, so to speak. But if there's anything that she's seen, I'd like to know what it is. But certainly we want to reach out and try and suggest topics that we'd like to talk about as opposed to just responding to what they say. Although, of course, if the board particularly wants to talk about something, we will.
Yes, I will try to see if she know in advance.
Yeah. So yeah, if you can get that within a few days by the end of this week for if it exists, for what expectations are for September 30th, and that would be good to know.
Okay, I'll check with her.
Okay. Any comments or any of the stuff here? We're just about to go to commissioners' updates, but is there any more comment or discussion on what we've just gone over here with September 30th and all that?
A quick question on the terms. Do we all serve the same terms, or are they staggered? I thought my term wasn't up, but it was, and I got reappointed. Was everybody that's still here reappointed?
The same, yeah. Everyone got the same letter, yes. With the same term, yes.
So we're not staggered. We all serve the same 2-year terms.
Yes, same 2 years.
Do we have any indication for the 3 vacancies of them being filled anytime soon?
We don't, except that we have Christy that replaced.
Oh, that's right. You're right.
Yes,
we did
yes.
replace.
So we down 2. Yeah.
Correct.
So we don't know about the other 2. Yeah.
Okay. That just leaves my perennial, which when you called the roll tonight, so it's back to you, Chair.
Yeah.
Was he reappointed?
I'm sorry.
I do not know.
What who?
Was the Sully representative reappointed?
Yes. Well, everyone everyone are reappointed. Yeah.
Well, okay, that's back to you, Chair. That's interesting.
Well, as a point of history, I've been here for 1,000,000 years, and I've seen a lot of turnover in this board, something like about 500%. And we go through these periods where we tend to lose a commissioner, so in bunches, and then the membership stabilizes for a while. And there were even a number of years ago where there were a couple of commissioners that passed away. I mean, so don't let your blood pressure go up. We'll work our way through this.
I think it was a little more focused on the commissioner that chooses not to attend.
Yeah, that's a different matter.
Yeah, that's kind of a unique case.
Okay.
Can we back on the staggereds? That seems like it could be an issue. Maybe we could try to look into where that is and whether that's something that we want to recommend being changed.
Wonder if all boards and commissions do it at the same time. I don't know. But, my
Yeah, some
suspicion
boards
is,
are-
and Calvin, if you
longer.
could check and find, yeah.
I think that they are reappointed or appointed at the same time, and for other committee too. Yeah, they send like a list of a very long list to the board to get approved at the same time. Yeah.
And actually, that's it. We've designed our officer election schedule around it too, because the reappointments are in June, and so then once folks are reappointed, then you can have your elections for officers. Secure that at least they've been reappointed. I mean, you can look at it, Calvin, but I think we know the answer. But let's not assume we know the answer. If you can check, please, and see if there are different terms, or if there is any staggering, or whether it's everybody in one big pile.
I'm checking right now, and it looked like that the term will expire on June 30th, 2024.
Well,
They
for
haven't
us,
said that yet.
but I'm wondering if Jeremy, am I correct if I understand you correctly, you're wondering if other boards or commissions have staggered terms or have their terms at different times? Because I think we are.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know some boards have longer terms, but I don't know if they're all, the entire board or commission is at the same time each year. I don't know. We should just look into it.
Okay.
I don't know what. I don't know
They
what.
they just reappointed every 2 years.
I'll appreciate what you can find. Okay.
I appreciate the suggestion, Jeremy, but and there are reasons for staggered terms, but I'd be very surprised if we had any success with changing. I just don't think the board has the bandwidth to get into. They've just got so many appointments to make that I'd just be very doubtful that they would think of going staggered terms.
Yeah. Well, I agree. They end up with staggered, having to deal with it anyways because there's so many vacancies.
Go ahead.
It's constantly a kind of a revolving appointment process.
Yes, yeah, it's true. But I mean, I gave the chief of staff of the Braddock district a little bit of a hard time last week. First time I was reappointed, he called me up and said, do it. So this time I gave him a hard time about, hey, I just got this, form letter from the clerk, nothing from you. And he laughed a little bit and he said, well, I did ask the transportation aide if I should do it or not, if the supervisor should do it or not. But I just think they're overwhelmed. It's like, we got a body, let's move on. And
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, and we've talked a bit about this, but the extent to which any board or commission, and let's talk about us for a minute, is providing value, then they're going to pay closer attention. They're going to be more concerned about who's on the group and things like that. So we've made some good progress these past few years, just being a bit more focused and providing some more recommendations, not just safe routes to schools, but other things. And so it's important to keep that momentum going, because that begets more momentum. So, but we'll work through it. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. Okay.
Very good.
Well, with that, let's go. So, Kevin, anything else?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, then let's move on to the final topic, which is commissioners' updates. So let me go through the roster again in the order in which we called your names in the beginning. Linda Sperling, any comments? I think she's my master, I think. Okay. Kevin, to you. Any more, sir?
Just a little less optimistic about our ability to get back in person. I just very quickly my feel bad for my my kid and grandkid. They were supposed to go to Hershey Park, and my grandson was going to have participate in a baseball tournament. And 2 days before they leave, he gets COVID, so that whole trip gets canceled. And you know, right now I went to Innova today because I've got a sore throat, and I was in a large meeting over the weekend. I got the rapid test back, came negative. I'm waiting for the other one tomorrow, which I think will be negative, but we're also trying to figure out whether I can have and want us to take my granddaughter tomorrow, but can't do that if somebody's testing positive. So it's just, you know, as everybody feels, you know, this thing is just, it's going on too long, and but I really hate to see it disrupting kids' lives. That's just especially unfair. So, but other than that, I would yield my time for a quick European trip update from the chair there, but maybe that'll be in his remarks.
Well, I did go through mine, but I will just briefly there. Again, hopefully you can hear me. They had a great time. Flew into Rome, went up to a place called Brescia. They had a road rally where they've got cars from 1927 to 1957, and still they had 440 of them. So they had a lot. And so that was on. It started on Wednesday, but we got up there on Monday, and they had a small number of the cars there in the plaza in town, and restaurants all around the outside. Beautiful early summer evening. Got a chance to see the cars and talk to the drivers. A lot of fun. Next day went to sort of the Lake District in Italy. You know, some pretty steep mountains there. I drove up one of them and looked at. They have like what looks like a diving board over this. You know, the side of this. It's not quite a mountain. It's not that tall, but it's pretty tall. And I tell you, if you've got vertigo, and like I kind of do, it's a little scary up there. But the scenery was just gorgeous. Saw the cars take off in the rally. Went to Venice for a couple days. That was good. Of course, Milan for the morning. The cars come back. They partied that night. Saw an old friend that I served with in Afghanistan. Headed down to Florence. Pretty amazing down there. Medieval Florence was quite a place. Saw the museum there. Managed to the hotel actually had a little tower that looked out over the city. So up there having a drink in the evening, just looking over the city at sunset. Not too bad. Rented a car, drove down through the wine country. Stayed a couple days in a winery. Went down to a small town called Pienza, which is apparently the best preserved medieval town in Italy. It's also one of the youngest ones. So apparently the Pope that set it up there said, we're going to all those things we've learned over years of doing town. So we'll do, and it's quite a place. And because of where it was, looking out over the mountains there, managed to have lunch at a restaurant overlooking the valley. Pretty cool. And then back to Florence to head on a train to Rome. Traipsed all around Rome for 2 days and hopped on a plane and came back. So I think I was in Florence when the last TAC meeting. So again, my apologies for not making it. But I think you can understand why I was not able to dial in.
I'm sure you gave those fabulous race car drivers a good lecture about how their skills won't be needed anymore in the future as we bring out the driverless cars.
Well, actually, I specifically wanted to drive a stick shift car in Italy, so I'm with the drivers. So I love to drive. So no such words will come off my lips. But definitely, a lot of us looking over our shoulder, wondering if we're how much longer we'll be able to drive. So, but I will say there was one time as we were driving down to Pienza on the top of one of these rises. Got out of the car, looked all around. All we could hear were birds chirping. It was very quiet. It was very nice. So, I highly recommend Italy. Everywhere you turn, everybody seems to be going. It's and then you see why. It's just it's an amazing place. It's pretty neat. It's pretty neat.
All right, well, I guess it's just a backlog in the US mail that we haven't received our gifts from your trip, but we'll keep waiting.
Keep waiting. Keep waiting. Exactly. Okay. Thanks, Kevin. If I could, I think next is Roger. Anything for the good of the order, sir?
Not tonight. You can proceed.
All right. Sounds good. Commissioner Sitnik, Pete, anything to report?
Just a little information. Tomorrow night, the Richmond Highway Safety Study report will be given out at a meeting at 7 p.m. So we're all tuned into that. We're expecting them to recommend 35 miles an hour, but who knows? And on buses, if you haven't watched or listened, Yellow Line will be shutting down this coming fall. It's going to affect parts of, definitely parts of Mount Vernon District and all. They're apparently hooking up the new station north of Alexandria, and they're doing some bridge work. And in between, they're going to do some free shuttle buses like they did the last time there was a disruption. So stay tuned, but that's what's happening right now.
Hey Pete, is 35 what they had
a year ago
last time?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
It's Jeremy. I was asking, is 35 what they had recommended last time that didn't go through?
Yes, it is. But last time when they recommended 35, they didn't recommend it. They just did it. And I forget the year, but it's been roughly 20 years ago. VDOT went down and changed the street signs to 35 miles an hour, and people like Jerry Highland, the supervisor for the area, was a little miffed. So that got undone. This time it's very different. They've been involved.
Is it 40 now?
Pardon me?
What's the current speed limit?
Current speed limit on most of Richmond Highway right now is 45. And even though I don't know this for sure, it will probably not be the entire stretch of Richmond Highway. There will be a section that is reduced to 35, and that I don't know what that is yet. But all indications are that at least half of the roughly 6 miles will end up being 35. Mm-hmm. It could be more. That's the recommendation. And at this point, the two supervisors in the area both have leaned in and say they'll support the recommendations. So we'll see.
Pete, if I could, did you also say the Yellow Line is shutting down? Are they sort of redoing the work they did a couple years ago? I mean, how's this different?
No, it's Yellow Line is shutting down because of
the Yellow Line.
Potomac, Potomac Yards. There's a new connection that's apparently being made. That's going to be needed in order to shut down, to make that connection. And there's some apparently bridge work that's going to be done at the same time. So it's not the station work like before. So
okay. How long will they be shut down?
Pretty long time. This is from memory, but it's from October to February. So pretty extensive time. But they learned from their mistakes and have hopefully they have learned from their mistakes last time when they shut down, and shuttle bus service and all will be provided. And like the 11Y bus, which was discontinued, which runs basically up and down the parkway, that's going to be reinstated at least for the shutdown period, and other changes been made. So it'll be disruptive, but hopefully not critical.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Okay. Just for the record, I'm lucky enough to have a woman that's managing all the bus issues in the Mount Vernon District, and she had us write a letter to all the players and to a point, all the players came back in support. So.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay. Well, thanks. Next, Jeremy, anything for the group?
Yep, nothing for me.
Okay, thank you. Eric, how about you, sir?
Nothing in general, but why don't you stay on the line after this is done, and I'll tell you how to diagnose your Wi-Fi.
Good plan.
Here.
Good plan.
or your direct connection.
Yeah, I might need to do that. I'll hang on a little bit here. So yeah, we can turn off the recording device and figure out what the problem was, because this is disconcerting. So appreciate that. I think that's it for the commissioners that are here this evening. And so Calvin, is there anything? In fact, I should ask Calvin. Is there anything you'd like to let us know about before we move on to close the meeting?
No, that's all I have. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
If I may,
Well,
I'd like to apologize for being late to the meeting. I was late today coming in. I was meeting my new son.
Yay.
For those of you who don't know, I got married, and with the marriage, ended up being a son and 2 daughters, and we went out with the son this evening, and it was a marvelous time. So, but I apologize for being late.
That's all right. Eric left his hand up 3 times during the meeting tonight. Just unacceptable. Unacceptable.
Well.
Okay, well, normally, or what used to be normally, our previous vice chair would honor us by making the motion to adjourn. So I think under the circumstances, our acting vice chair, Roger, would you like to make the motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right.
Third.
All right, that's quickly done. So Commissioner Hoskin has a motion to adjourn.
Kevin.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. Sounds good. The motion is carried unanimously. We are adjourned at 9:51 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone. Look forward to next month's meeting, and we'll be in touch on the items that we've discussed this evening.
Good night, all. Be safe.
Good night, Pete.
Thank you, Pete.
Eric.